From beautiful East Tennessee in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains, you're listening to the Sherry Voluntary Show. And I welcome you and thank you for spending a little time with me today. So tonight's guest is a highly controversial figure within the Libertarian Party. And he is also the author of 5 books, an entrepreneur, and has previously run for the Maryland House of Delegates and for U.S. House, and is currently a candidate again for the U.S. Senate, or for the U.S. Senate. And he is also the current vice chair of the Libertarian National Committee. And Mr. Arvin Vohra, we welcome you to the show, or Vohra.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on so much. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I know you're a busy guy, got a lot going on, and there's a lot going on in your life right now. So before we sort of get to the more controversial elements of what's been happening, I'd like to talk a little bit about your background.
Sure.
And how you came to be a libertarian, first of all.
Sure. So I'm an entrepreneur. I've seen all the damage that government does to small businesses. I've seen the way that it tries to favor large businesses over small businesses. I've seen so many great startups not make it because of the regulations. So to me, a big part of being a libertarian comes from seeing what it means to be an entrepreneur, and from how much more we could all have if we just got government out of the way. Another big part of my life is that I'm an educator. My business is about education. It's a free market education company. And I see how much damage is done by government schools. I see how much human potential is wasted because of government schools. I see that government schools do more damage than anything else. So a big part of why I'm a libertarian is I want to abolish government schools. I want to see the free market handle government schools. I want the education sector to be as big and as innovative and as exciting as the tech sector, with great opportunities for students and great jobs for educators. That's what I want to see. And I see these huge impediments created by the government. So that's some of how I became a libertarian and how I really started embracing the ideas of getting government out of education, getting government out of, as I've learned more about other areas, getting government out of healthcare, bringing the military, shutting down foreign military bases, bringing the troops home. I mean, a lot of these ideas have come because I've talked to people who work in those areas and see how badly government mismanages everything.
Right. Yeah. Kind of the human potential versus state-assisted potential that usually doesn't work out the way people would like it to.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
So now your parents are immigrants to the United States from India, correct? Do you think that has sort of given you a unique perspective on America's role in the world?
Yes.
And how we're looked at, how we're viewed, and maybe what we can do about that?
Yes, it's actually had a very strong influence on me. Growing up between two cultures, you're always able a little bit more to view either culture objectively. So as a simple example, in America, people say that if there was no government, no one would be able to afford education. Now, back in India, and I'm not even talking about, like, they're saying nobody would be able to afford private education. Obviously, anyone can afford homeschool. Anyone can afford free online education. But in India, there are so many small private schools that poor people go to. I mean, they're not expensive. They're just like, like you have a restaurant that's a 5-star restaurant. Not a lot of poor people go there. You have a restaurant that's maybe a little bit more of a mom and pop shop, more poor people are going to be there. Similarly, in India, you have a lot of very low cost private schools that the ultra poor, in India, you have a much deeper level of poverty often than in America, can go to. So when people say things like, well, we couldn't have education if it wasn't for the government, I've been part of a culture that knows how stupid that is. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. And so that's a big part of it. I've also traveled a lot. I've traveled to many, many countries, and I've really gotten to know a lot of the people in different countries. Spoken to a lot of people very, very deeply for a long time, understood their experiences, and I have seen that in the eyes of many people in many countries, including countries that are our allies, I'm not talking about visits to North Korea. I've never been there. I'm talking about going to our allies. They view America as an international bully. And think about this. If we are making our allies so unhappy, what are we doing with our non-allies? Yeah. And that's one of the big reasons that I want to bring the troops home, stop all action, all military action in foreign civil wars. It's why I'm a big believer in open and free trade. You know, I've been to India and I've talked to people who are trying to sell to Americans, right? And what do? They try to learn about American culture. American culture spreads there because we have a huge economy and businesses want to sell to us. I can't imagine how much better we would be if we use the same approach to Iran, to North Korea, let the companies there want to learn about American culture so they could sell to Americans.
Yeah, I think there's the old adage, and I may get this wrong, but when trade ends, war begins. So trade is really the great opener of societies, and
it's the opposite too, where trade begins, war ends.
Right, exactly. I think that's can really be evidenced in North Korea and South Korea, where we've actually inhibited them on many instances where they have tried to get together on their own, and the United States has stepped in and said, no, you can't, or you can't do this and that. And so it's actually kept the people of the North isolated and more involved in supporting, not that they support it, but that government where they're so isolated, they don't know that there's that much different outside of there. And it reminds me something that you wrote, this is months and months ago, that I saved because I thought it was a really beautiful way of explaining how economics is really what combats prejudice and racism. And I just talked with Eric July recently about this same subject and how really, we're never going to stop everyone from being a racist. And people have the right to be wrong, basically. But we can incentivize through business and people having more agency in their financial and business lives to open up their minds to accepting other people because they want to do business with them. Yeah. So you wrote something about how libertarianism doesn't protect you from yourself. If you're a go-getter, you'll be rewarded. If you aren't, then you'll have those consequences. But you also said that if you want to make a racially isolated group, libertarianism won't stop you, but the free market may have something to say. Racially isolated groups tend to achieve much less than their counterparts who face constant challenges and innovations. Japan, during the 2-century isolation, turned into a cultural backwater and technological laughingstock. Although its culture was entirely dedicated to war, the lack of culture and technological competition made it no longer militarily competitive. Cultural challenges, innovation, and competition has, on the other hand, made America a technological and cultural powerhouse. Even in America, the most stagnant areas are those with only one ethnic group. The most vibrant and innovative cities have the most cultural diversity. Libertarianism allows you to have any belief you want, no matter how silly, but unlike statism, it doesn't subsidize them. The free market holds you accountable for the effectiveness of your beliefs and behaviors. And that, I thought, was just such a beautiful way of tying that all together, that we're never going to stop people from having ideas and wanting certain things in life. But what we can do is incentivize the right things instead of the wrong things. And people are going to do what they will with that. But I really appreciated that. And I thought it was so well put together. And to the fact that you're an immigrant, to maybe seeing that a little better, because I'm sure your parents, as many people I know who are immigrants or have immigrant parents, talked a lot about how they grew up, and you're still within that culture. So do you think that is has given you, maybe, like you said, the outsider's perspective? Do you feel like that's kind of led you into libertarianism as well? Because it seems to be a real outsider type of ideology amongst people.
There's a couple of things that I think are very significant there. Not long ago, I was speaking to just a small group of entrepreneurs. It wasn't an official speech. It was just kind of an informal get together. Mm-hmm. And I asked, some folks were asking, like, what advice I give, and I say and I said to me, and they asked everybody. They weren't just asking, they asked everybody. And I said to me, the most important person in your company, the most important person in your business is the person who's always disagreeing with you. If you don't have that person in your business, that's why your business is not doing that well right now. You need that person. I know who that person is in my business. It's my director of operations. Mm-hmm. She disagrees with me on nearly everything. And that challenge makes us try to find things to improve. If she doesn't like a thing, which is honestly many things, then it gives me the understanding that that's what I need to work on. That's what I need to improve. And that's good. Similarly, when it comes to the idea of being inside or outside of cultures, the different cultures will disagree. That's kind of the point. Because until there's something where the cultures totally agree on, it means that there's room for improvement. You have, and for a cell phone, we use very low power LED screens. We could also try to use high-power CRT screens, and the result would be that a cell phone battery would last for 5 seconds. The fact that Americans and the Chinese and Indians and Canadians and South Americans can all agree on that, it means it's a good idea. And that's where good ideas come from. You need to be willing to say that, yeah, this is what my culture is used to, but it could probably be better. This is what I grew up with, but maybe we could do it better. This is the default assumption that I've had, but let me challenge those assumptions so I can make something much, much, much better. And I think that's really part of the immigrant experience. It's why so many immigrants, I believe, really become entrepreneurs. I believe it's why so many immigrants more and more are leaning towards libertarianism, right? Because they're seeing things from that outside perspective.
Yeah, it's the tension of competition that makes things actually better. Not, I think people often have an idea of peace as something without competition. And really, you can't really have great quality of life without that competition, because that's what drives business forward. I guess that's sort of what you're saying. Also, I just wanted to ask you, you're from a Muslim background, is that correct? Also?
No, my parents are actually Hindu.
Oh, they're Hindu. Okay.
And the interesting thing is, and here's something. I mean, I usually don't talk about that as often, but what's interesting is my dad's basically an atheist. My mom actually practices two religions, okay, which are Sikhism and Hinduism, and they're honestly kind of different religions. Sure. But she believes that it's good to draw from both these religions, like draw inspiration, draw ideologies, draw strength. Right. It's something that I try to practice. It's, even though I'm, like my personal life is very secular, I spend a lot of time learning and reading about religions because there is so much valuable knowledge, so many great ideas, so many powerful metaphors that I think that even secular people can really draw a lot of strength from. And I think that really shows that even in an area like religion, it's great to pull ideas and to consider different perspectives rather than getting stuck in one way of thinking. Today, we see the same issue. Things like government schools, military worship have become kind of our state religion. It's not officially a religion, but it's a lot like a religion. And I think that the willingness to start to question that, to say maybe we can think about life a little differently, is a fundamental libertarian principle.
Yeah, it's sort of the same idea of that competition and in the arena of ideas, and that religious minorities, I often wonder how they view the whole, the Christian experience looms so large in the United States. And so from that outside perspective, I wonder how often they see the rest of society, and maybe they see a little bit more clearly the ways that civil religion has crept in, because it's generally from a Christian point of view. I haven't had too many experiences where I'm with someone who's in another religious place where there's an American flag hanging at the front with the altar. I've seen that in many Christian churches. So I think that's an interesting point. And I know Sikhs have also been kind of mistaken a lot for Muslims, I guess especially the male Sikhs, because they wear the turbans. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that has happened a lot, and to me, the way when people ask, I mean, obviously you ask out of curiosity, right? But a lot of times people ask in a way that's a little bit more hostile. And what I always tell them is this: whatever religion you hate the most, that's the religion I am right now. Because I'm not, like, even though I'm relatively secular, I'm going to stand up for every religion. Like, I believe that is a fundamental human right to practice your religion without being attacked by the state, or without being, favored or disfavored by the state, or to be, frankly, without being attacked by other individuals. I believe that it is, if you are practicing your religion peacefully, then no one should be trying to, belittle or assault you because of it.
Right.
That's not necessarily political, but I can be as whatever the opposite of silver tongued is as the next guy. So if we were going to have a discussion,
it just seems like that. For many people, I mean, I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, so very religious town, and for the most part, mostly Christians. And a lot of people are conservative and they're on the right, and you hear a lot of talk about Muslims, especially, and the fear that surrounds that religion and that group of people. Like, I've read a little bit on it. I don't know an extreme, a lot about it, but it seems like the state uses that sort of fear to drive the wars, to keep people tied into their agenda, which has nothing to do with religion, while also creating a problem that we didn't necessarily have before.
It's very true, and so there's a thing that I read yesterday. It's such a perfect analogy, and there was a quote that says, "Only a fool lets his enemy choose the enemy."
Sure.
Many people with a conservative background, they know the government's the enemy. They already know it. They know that taxes are bad. They know that government schools are bad. I mean, the homeschooling movement is huge, among people who are Catholics or Protestants or various types of Christians, and also among people who are very secular. I mean, they deeply get that, right? They get that the government's the enemy. They get it almost more than anybody else, and yet they still find themselves manipulated by the government because they're letting the government pick their enemy. Yeah. And I've talked to a lot of people and I said, I get that we have different religions and different religious views, but we all know the government is the enemy, and we also know the government is manipulative. Like, we know that's why we don't use their schools, because they manipulate our kids. Yeah. We know that they're bad. So just in the same way that they manipulate kids, they can manipulate adults too. They are tricking us into fighting the wrong enemy. They're the enemy, not somebody in a cave somewhere or in a nice city somewhere. That's not the enemy.
Yeah, I think too. I see a lot of the authoritarianism of the right, the strict adherence to the authority and what they say, and so there's like this disconnect that many of them, you'll see like the "Don't Tread on Me" flag on someone's car with an American flag, or a "Back the Blue" sticker. All these things that they really respect the authority to the point where they are trying to make okay the bad things that they do. It's kind of, there's like that cognitive dissonance that comes over people where there's like this worship of the government. There's also this hostility towards them and recognizing that there's something wrong, but they want the same solution over and over again. They keep saying, well, if we go back to this or that we'll be fine again, but we'll just end up in the same place, honestly, because the idea that the state is the savior of whatever problem you have is a bad one, and then it's gonna. So I mean,
but it's changing though, and I really do think it's changing. I think the thing that I've really there's many things I like about religion, but one of my favorite things about religions, I find that it gives a lot of people personal strength to resist. A big power. I mean, the government's a big power, but if you're religious, it's smaller than God. And I think that courage is very useful. I mean, even though I'm a secular person myself, I will give credit that a lot of the homeschooling movement came out of a lot of religious communities. Yes. I mean, and to them, I absolutely thank you for doing that. It was such an important thing to do. It's helping religious people. It's helping secular people. I saw a thing on my favorite Facebook page, that's Anarchy Ball, and it had basically these two signs on the same house. And one was, come and take them, like the gun rights type thing.
Right.
And also was a thin blue line thing. And then the question was like, I wonder if they know who is going to come and take them.
Exactly.
but it's a process, and I do believe a lot of the people who are in the I actually spoke to somebody just a few days ago who'd grown up very conservative Christian. Her entire family always voted Republican and did this time as well. And I actually thought that she had as well. I didn't even ask. She later mentioned that she voted for Gary Johnson, and I was shocked. And then we got to talking, and she was like, a lot of the people in the conservative communities and religious communities, especially in homeschooling communities, they're all libertarian. They just don't really know what that word is. I mean, they're unfamiliar with it. And so I do think there's a lot of hope to be gained there. I mean, some of the things that I've seen speaking to people in the homeschool communities and a lot of religious communities, that is definitely a place where our ideas, I believe, are already spreading without our help, and we can just kind of encourage them along a bit.
Right. Yeah. That has been my experience. That I don't know that there's still a lot of really like neocon homeschoolers. I actually know homeschoolers who have their kids say the pledge in the morning, just like a lot of schools do. But there's a really large number of secular homeschoolers, and I was really shocked when I first started homeschooling, because I assumed that most of the groups would be religious and I would be sort of this pariah, this outcast, and I didn't want my kids to suffer for, my political beliefs or whatever. But I've been really surprised at how many secular homeschoolers there are in the far left and the right, because they recognize something's going on and they want to opt out of that. And Knoxville happens to be a great place for homeschooling. It's very homeschool friendly. So I've been really thankful for that. And speaking of schooling, your business deals with young adults who are preparing for college, correct?
My business, that's kind of like what a lot of people think. Actually, my business works with kids of all ages.
Okay.
I have folks from age 7 to people in their late 20s preparing for the GRE and GMAT. To me, education, to do it well, you have to be aware of what's going on at the different levels. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of the damage that we see in government schools comes because they don't do that. No calculus teacher is going to teach Common Core. They're going to take one look and say, that's stupid. That's not how you learn math for calculus. Let me not do that.
Right.
But when you have that separation and have just like the third grade teacher just trying to get you to fourth grade by any means necessary, you get a lot of damage. That's the type of bad decision making you get from the government. It's one of the big reasons that I support homeschooling, unschooling, basically just anything other than government schooling, is because you don't have that factory style indifferent education. You have people who actually care about what's happening, getting good results.
Yeah, I have seen that in my own life, actually, with my son, who's 15. We've used the Ron Paul curriculum because he's very, he likes structure. We actually tried to piece together a curriculum for him when he first started, but he came to us and said, I can't do this. I need to know where I am. I need to know that I'm doing, what I need to be doing. Like, he needed those benchmarks. But my daughter, who is naturally an anarchist, I guess, she's was just so resistant to being taught. So our friends who homeschool, and they use the unschooling method. We decided to try that with her, and I was really skeptical of it. But his kids are great, and they're very intelligent and bright, and have done well in life. So I thought, well, we'll try it, and I've been amazed with what she has taught herself, really. She taught herself to read. She's now really interested in spelling things correctly because she wants to do that. And designing, all sorts of things that she's done because she's got developing that inner drive. And so I've been really impressed with that aspect of how well they can do on their own when they're left to explore their own desires, even at 7. So I think that's where public school often misses, the boat, is with the cookie cutter approach to children, as if they're not unique. Because I think we all know in the adult world, we all learn differently. We all have different interests. There are things that I've never used that I learned in school, and things that I like. Latin, which I took as an elective, was one of the most the best things I ever took, because it's helped me, just in life. I've actually used that skill of being able to kind of look at words and figure out what they mean. Not that that's been, a super helpful. It's been somewhat helpful, but anyways, I think
that's interesting, because Latin's one of those things that people always say it's so useless. But for me, I'm with you. I was like, Latin, I'm so glad I studied Latin.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've been able to figure out a lot from that. I think that people often, when we say, we want to end public education, because that's from a moral standpoint of forcing people to pay for things is not right. Like, I'm forced to pay for public education. But I don't use that. I could spend that money better in my own home, educating my children, doing whatever I need to do with it. And people often think that when you advocate for ending systems like that you just don't want people to be educated. They go to the opposite extreme where you think every teacher is bad. And that's certainly not the case, that anyone would claim that teachers are bad people. I mean, many of them are driven to do that job because they love kids and they love educating them. But it's another way that the market can provide solutions.
Yeah, I mean, when I say people say, what are the limits of the free market? To me, there's basically one limit, and that is that if there's something that people are willing to pay for, the free market can give you that. Yeah. If there's something that's so stupid no one would ever pay for it, free market can't give you that. People would pay to use roads. Free market will give you that. People will pay to get education because that makes some sense. Free market can give you that. No one in their right mind would pay for a drug war. So yeah, the free market will not give us a drug war because it's useless. Nobody wants it in the first place. So it doesn't really come in that way.
Yeah. I love the idea of, say, the one-room schoolhouse. And that's, I know, something that's been effective in many poor countries where there isn't an education system. So parents in a village will hire a teacher, and the teacher will come in and teach the children. And I think that's generally many people, thousands and thousands of people have learned that way. And my daughter will be attending a co-op next year that 3 days a week, where she will be with a range of kids from different ages, and they learn from each other. That's one of the things that they can then do. And so I think kids are more invested in that when they can have a part in helping the younger ones. And of course, you're learning while you're teaching. So I really think that a lack of imagination is often why people can't see outside the government structure. And I know that's difficult because we're so sort of indoctrinated to that idea that the government is always the solution to whatever problem we have, when often it's actually the thing that it stems from, like the drug war is such a great example. It's created much more problems than drugs do in a society. So it's really
like you're taking a small problem and turning it into a gigantic disaster.
Right, exactly. So do you feel that your work with young people has given you maybe a better insight into reaching, say, the next generation of libertarians?
A little bit. I mean, a little bit. I mean, I think that more and more kids are realizing that the stuff they're getting in school is garbage. I mean, they're seeing that. And so when I talk to people, at YAL meetings who are like, 18, 19, 20 years old, or Students for Liberty, people who I've spoken to in that organization, so often I'm basically realizing that they know what I'm saying. When I say, that information you got at school, it was largely dishonest. And they're saying, yeah, I know, because I studied afterward and I know they were lying to me. And I say, why are we paying a single cent to have a bunch of kids lied to? Why are we paying for Common Core? Why are we paying for propaganda masquerading as history? And at a deeper level, why are we paying to subsidize irresponsibility? Why are we saying that it's good to have kids that you are not able to afford? Why are we saying that it is the right thing to be irresponsible? Why are we rewarding people for that? And so I think because I do work with so many kids, I just kind of see where they are and I see their frustrations. I see so many great kids who are getting more turned off from education because they're seeing how pointless this kind of government education is.
Right. I'm sorry. I think it goes to the aspect of, radical freedom, but also radical personal responsibility, where giving people everything for every mistake they've made in life is not making them more responsible. You don't raise kids that way, and you don't teach responsibility that way. You you learn responsibility by being responsible for things. So it would work in the same manner, that give people back their responsibility, and you'll see them become more responsible, whereas they're not incentivized to do that with, many of the current systems that we have that are supposed to help them. Did we?
And I think, and I think that's like a very, very key thing over there. I just switched over to my backup camera over there for a second. It's not as fancy, but it seems to actually be working. Okay. I think that's a major thing that we're seeing, which is that more and more people are recognizing this, that there's so much greatness that you can get from not being involved in a government-style education program. We're seeing so many people realizing that they are unique people, that they don't need to be in this one-size-fits-none approach. We're getting so many people who can see that. And that, to me, is a glorious and wonderful and positive thing. And that's really what I want to see more and more people embrace.
Yeah, I think there we are. Keep freezing up a little. I think that's one of the things that I always say to people, look, if you want to have a public school system, so to speak, a broader school system, that's fine. But why are you making me pay for it? I don't want it. So I think we can have many of the same systems that aren't based on force, because if you're forcing me to do it, it's wrong in the first place. So that's always going to be something that, from a moral standpoint, is wrong, because other people are forced to pay for what you want. It's not right in any other area of life. It's certainly not right in education. So, I'm fine with that. But why not I can opt out. I can teach my kids at home like we do. We're perfectly happy with that. And I can have that tax money back so that I'm not forced to it. And I think, I find even libertarians disagreeing with that at times.
And it's true. I mean, honestly, I had no idea that there were so many libertarians who would oppose ending government schools. To me, I'm not even sure the word libertarian applies, but I was just so shocked, because to me, that's the easy stuff. I mean, that's where everyone can be on board saying that, forcing people to pay for government schools that they don't want and they don't like and they don't use is wrong. I mean, everyone can agree with that. Everyone's a libertarian at the very least should be able to agree with that. Yeah,
this don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. There was no caveat for public education or for, the things that you like. That's what you want people to pay for. You'd like the government proxy to bonk people on the head and make them pay for things because you like it. That's exactly the same way the system already operates. So I don't understand the point of being a libertarian if you want to force people to do things, because that totally goes against the grain of or the foundation of what libertarianism is. So I don't get that point of view, but maybe someone will explain it to me. So I think it's a good time then to kind of, since we're talking about something that's controversial, to kind of go into the more controversial aspects of your tenure as the vice chair of the Libertarian National Committee. So, you've said a lot of things over the past, I guess it's all the 2 years is almost up, correct? It's a 2-year. I've only been in the party for a year, or almost a year. I'm trying to remember. It's a 2-year term. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So it's coming to the end of that, and you've been sort of this firebrand of controversy, and I just wondered was there a strategy behind that, or was it something you stumbled upon and then kept going with, or?
There's a little of both. I figured that talking about things like abolishing government schools, not being, I've never been a huge fan. Like, I like military culture because I think it's interesting. It has a lot of good ideas, but I don't think we're gaining anything by sending young people on a clearly and obviously corrupted mission. Right. I think that is an immoral thing for adults to be doing. If we know the mission is corrupted, our job, in my opinion, is to do whatever it takes to get people to not join that corrupted mission. So I knew that there would be some pushback. And on some of the times I wasn't surprised, and some of the times I was surprised. I was definitely surprised. I've been very surprised by how many libertarians support government schools. I've been shocked and amazed. I never in my wildest dreams would have thought that would be, something that would happen. So once I saw that, I realized how important it is We need a culture change in this party. Right now, we are acting somewhere between Democrat light and Republican light. We are going along with the values and mores of our enemies. We are playing along with their propaganda. We are helping their propaganda. We are saying that being part of government schools and the military is a good thing. We have candidates who brag about about either being in the military or being government school teachers, and other people in the party say, yeah, that's a really good thing. That is not a good thing. It is a thing to say, here's a thing I did. I wish I hadn't. You should not do it either. That's one thing, but that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
And the problem is when we do that, all the people who would support us if we did that, if we fought the good fight, all the people who would support us if we fought government schools, they don't support us because they don't know that we oppose government schools. We're so busy trying to pander to the people who are already voting Democrat and Republican, trying to get a pat on the head from them, that we're not reaching our actual natural allies. Why are homeschoolers voting Republican? They shouldn't be. They're voting Republicans because libertarians are so busy focusing on hiding the fact that we oppose government schools.
Right. Yeah. I think you had written an open letter that I saw on your Facebook page. And you said that some of the caucuses were working to defang our libertarian messages and make them get a pat on the head from our literal opponents. So why does it need the fangs?
Because we are in the middle of a cultural war. And we have two options. We can become the enemy's lapdog, or we can defeat the enemy. And I believe we can defeat the enemy. Mm-hmm. Every time the American schools fall short, that's ammo for us. Every single time that homeschoolers outperform government schoolers, that's more proof for us. Mm-hmm. But we have to do it before the fact. We have to stand up for it now. We can't, after it's already proven itself, stand up for it then. Then we're just like, panderers. We're nothing.
Right.
We need to fight for it right now. This is when it's going to matter. Because here's the thing. When all those homeschoolers, because they're smarter, because they have better motivation, when they're running the world, they're going to remember who fought for them. And right now, it's not the Libertarian Party. I wish it was, but I cannot say at this moment in time it's the Libertarian Party fighting for them. At this moment in time, it is the Republican Party fighting for them. That's why they keep voting Republican. We could fight for them harder.
Yeah.
We have elected officials. We have candidates who can go around talking about ending government schools. We have elected officials that can propose legislation to get rid of government schools. Republicans won't do it. We could do it. And at that moment, they would know we are on their side, so that when they win, and they will win because their education is better, education actually does matter, we would have their support. But that we haven't gotten there yet, and I really think that we need to get there. We need to support the libertarian behavior that's going to work.
Yeah, I think too, a lot of people, to them it's purely about strategy, and they really. I have friends, dear friends that I love who are libertarians as well, who really feel like if we just can get people elected, then we can change and make a difference. And I'm like, no, then you've lied to the base you've built and you'll never get reelected. And so you play the same game to kind of pour yourselves out to, whoever's going to elect you. And
it's also very bad strategy because it's not going to work.
Right.
Here's what happens with that strategy. Let's say that you and let's say we both agree government schools are bad. We're going to run for office, right? But we're going to hide that fact. Let's say we're trying to be strategic and we're going to say, I'm going to hide that fact because I'm so smart. All right, so we hide it. A lot of people hear us speak. They're like, yeah, that's really cool ideas. I really like them. Here's the thing. They didn't know we were hiding the government school opposition because we hid it so well. Right. Now they don't think that ending government schools is part of our platform. Now they're going to run for office. They're not talking about ending government schools. You know why? Because you and I hid it. Mm-hmm. We were so good at hiding it that we convinced them. We managed to trick them. Now they're tricking everybody else, but they're not tricking them on purpose. They're tricking them because they themselves have been tricked.
Yeah.
And that builds on itself. And now you get more and more people who just don't know. It's not because they're bad or because they're, their status.
Right.
It's because we lied to them about what libertarianism is.
Right.
It was our fault. And so I know that people say it's like a pragmatic thing. Yeah, maybe it's like socially short-term pragmatic, like their friends and mom won't yell at them as much. But the fact is that if you actually want a strategy that will work for us to win, And when I say win, I mean win federal office. For us to win the presidency, we need a massive cultural upheaval. That is the only way it's going to happen. This culture is not going to elect a libertarian president. A different culture very well might.
Right. I think, too, it seems like when we do that, we sort of give away the moral high ground that we have naturally by saying it's not okay to force people to do things. If you force someone to have sex, that's rape. Why is it not or why is it different if you're forcing me to pay for schools or forcing me to go to war, whatever that is. So I think we sort of undermine our own message by not standing out from the crowd and saying, look, we recognize that you and the Democratic Party and you and the Republican Party are dismayed and feel lost and feel like nobody is supporting actual freedom in this country, but we're here to tell you we are, and we are different, and this is why, because we don't want to use force against you to make, our good ideas, oppress you with our good ideas or force you to do it. So I think that we sort of undermine ourselves with that sort of hiding who we really are, and that if we can just, be bold and be unapologetic in that, we can really make that cultural difference that we have to have, because as we know, culture is upstream of politics. And so we have to change the culture to change the politics. And I think people are ready to hear that if we actually can get the message out there to them, the real message.
Here's the thing, I speak to a lot of different people from many different groups, many just individual people, just not really part of any group. And I understand why, people who call themselves pragmatists, I get what they're doing, because they're looking at the people who are politically active right now. They're looking at, government school PTA groups. They're looking at all the pro-welfare groups, unions, all that kind of stuff, and they're saying, look, this is the culture of those people. And they're right. Those people are currently culturally dominant, and they're currently going to vote for things within their culture. However, there are other cultures out there. They don't have cultural hegemony. They don't have cultural hegemony right now. They're not culturally dominant right now, but they're there.
Right.
They are big. Many of them are kind of silent, but they're in the millions. They're many times the size of the liberty movement. Reaching out to them, emboldening them, letting them know that, listen, I know that this cultural hegemony has put these people on top. Let's do two things. One, let's knock them down. Let's knock them the hell down. And I mean, all those people that go along with the government propaganda nonsense, let's knock them on their ass a little bit. I'm including government school teachers, police, and military. They should be at the absolute social and cultural bottom of our culture. They should not be anywhere but at the bottom. Who should be at the top? People who do things without force. Whether it's people who are farming without force, or running businesses without force, or working without force, or doing anything without force, they should be at the top. And once we create that cultural, value reversal, that's going to go along with a political reversal. A culture that worships the military, a culture that worships government schools, will never in a billion years elect a libertarian president. The cultural worship of those groups has to stop for us to win. And we have to stop it if we're ever going to win.
Yeah. I knew I could rely on you to be bold. As always, you never disappoint in that area. One of the things that I've seen a lot of online is really an assassination of your character over some of the things you've said. And it's come from inside the Libertarian Party.
Yep.
And I feel like a lot of it's very reactionary, because maybe you said one thing in the past that they didn't like, and so now they're just kind of, some people are jumping on the bandwagon who may disagree with you, and I'm not going to say their points are legitimate or illegitimate, but it seems like a lot of it is now about revenge and about bringing you down, Arvin Vohra, and sort of not really looking at the issue of what you're saying. I've seen a lot of people, it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. And at first I was sort of even though I philosophically agreed with you, I was like, I would not have said that. But thinking in that way, I was saying, well, too, even though I wouldn't have said it, he those are his words. They're not mine. He can defend himself. He's a grown man. Like, I don't have to be upset about it. But I think a lot of people maybe feel like somehow what you're saying reflects on them, and they don't like that. Not just that, there are some people who just disagree with what you're saying fundamentally, but that some people.
I mean, there is that, and I think it's important to look at this, right? We live in a culture with a lot of propaganda. Propaganda saying that if you're a proud public school parent, that's like a good thing, it's a noble thing, and all that. That's the culture we live in, and people are told that constantly. You have someone like me who says, like, if you're a public school parent, you're just using up welfare and giving your kids a bad education. You're just like abusing your kids, and you're stealing from your neighbors. That's a hard thing to hear.
Yeah.
And again, it's not even for them. To me, that group is a lost cause. That's for the homeschoolers who are silenced. That's for the people who have to be ashamed to send their kids to private schools. I saw on what's the name of that show? House of Cards. I saw in House of Cards they had a debate where they were attacking each other for using private schools.
Right.
I mean, that is how backwards our culture has become. And I don't hold to that. Using a government school is wrong. If you're poor, it's understandable. If you are middle class, it is not understandable. Mm-hmm. It is okay. I get it. Sometimes, you have a bunch of money and then you lose it. Maybe the government takes it. Maybe something else happens. And I get that things can happen. I'm not trying to be insensitive to that. Mm-hmm. But when you have people who are middle class, who have money for like vacations and everything else, but they don't have money to actually pay for their own kids' education or choosing to use welfare education, I'm going to call it welfare education. Mm-hmm. I'm going to call welfare until it's not welfare. And I'm going to insult people for using welfare and being all high and mighty about it. Mm-hmm. If they're saying, listen, I'm doing this thing out of desperation, then I'm going to shut the hell up. I'm not going to attack somebody who is desperate or, trying to just get by. But if someone's going to say I'm all good because I use government schools, no, you're not. Mm-hmm. There's nothing good about it. It's shameful. And I get sometimes we do shameful things in desperation, but you're not going to get me playing along with being proud of it. Mm-hmm. So when you have someone like me that's been doing that for months and months, then yeah, of course it's going to get attacks. All the attacks that you've seen in the quote media have only been written by people in the Libertarian Party. Mm-hmm. It's not been any external media. I wish it was, because that would give me an opportunity to respond and spread the message of abolishing government school to a wider audience. But so far, it's only been Libertarian Party members who want to see, one of their own people, being a more visible face or something like that.
Right. Yeah. I sort of, I've become more bold in my radicalism over the past year, especially. And that's one of the things, in thinking it through. We've had 70 years of trying to work within the culture, trying to, different strategies out, trying to figure out our way, I guess, as a party. Mm-hmm. But it hasn't really changed that much. I think there has been, that maybe not the right way to say it. There has been a big change where people are starting to see things in more libertarian ways. I think especially after the Ron Paul presidencies, him being a philosophical libertarian, that changed a lot of minds and got people, on the road to thinking differently and maybe outside the box, which was good. But that sometimes what we need is that shocking statement to wake people up. If you're walking around in a fog of, statism, maybe that's what you need. Maybe you need to get angry. Maybe you need to be told, yeah, that's not virtuous. Taking people's guns is not virtuous. That doesn't make you a good person. Forcing people to do X, Y, and Z because you want it done does not make you virtuous. It makes you a thief or it makes you an aggressor. And so I had this conversation I like to call, prison rape cages, because that's what I think you're doing when you send nonviolent people, especially young people, into prisons. You are sending them to be sexually assaulted. There's no doubt about that. They are used like merchandise in those places, and you should be called out for that. You should understand that is what you are doing to a young person's life. And these people have done nothing violent. I'm not talking about rapists and murderers. I'm talking about, people who have done drugs, and so therefore you're going to let violence be enacted against them. that maybe will wake someone up and start changing things.
One of the things that was such a powerful wake, and it didn't even change my mind. It's not like my mind was changed. I was at Brown, very left-wing, statist, liberal college. And I definitely had a sense that like I didn't agree with a lot of the stuff, but I didn't know how to put it into words. When I read The Fountainhead and then later Atlas Shrugged, it was so powerful. I would say like, speeding ticket kind of just feels like you're being robbed. And I get it's for a good cause and all that. Then I see like these ideas, taxation is theft, that it happens at the point of a gun, that like government gets in the way of individual innovation. It was so powerful to me because it was so bold. That's the thing.
Yeah.
There are other things out there that are less bold. And I don't know, maybe they would have spoken to me, but honestly, probably not. The sheer emotional power of Ayn Rand's writing, the way that she like really made it so vivid and engaging, and I could identify with it so strongly. I mean, that to me is a great template for what has worked, what has inspired people. How many millions have been inspired by her writing? That to me is important. And there's certainly areas in where I disagree with Ayn Rand. There's many areas that we don't see eye to eye. That's not the point. But the point is that shock of being pulled out of this one way of thinking into another way of thinking only worked because it was shocking, because it was so bold. And I think there's a big room for that and almost a necessity for that inside of our movement.
Yeah, I think people, they understand that in a broader way. Like if you want to make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs. Like people get that sometimes. But I don't know, when it comes to these certain issues that involve children and involve, things that are institutions like the police, and saying, we want to do it a different way. We don't think that starting from an immoral foundation of force gets you to a moral place. The ends don't justify the means. And so let's actually hold ourselves to the standard that we say we believe in as a society, the golden rule. Well, let's hold ourselves to that standard. And I think that's, I'm sort of coming around to the I've never really liked respectability politics, but I'm sort of that kind of person. I didn't like to get into arguments and, whatever. But maybe it's being the age I am now. I'm just like, whatever. I'm ready to go for it because I want a different world, and I'm not getting it by being nice. And so it doesn't mean I want to hurt people. It doesn't mean I'm not compassionate. And I want to do things in the least argumentative way possible, but it's just sometimes you can't, and you have to make those bold statements to get people to even get angry so that they maybe consider a different way of thinking. Somebody
angrily posted on one of my posts the other day that was something like, man, you just need to shut up about government schools. When you talk about it now, I don't even get mad anymore. Somebody else responds, read your sentence, and I think you'll see the strategy. And he responded like, oh, well played or something like that. But that's the thing, like culture change isn't easy. It's not supposed to be easy. Nothing worthwhile is ever easy. Yeah. Nothing worthwhile comes without effort and cost and hard work. I mean, that's how worthwhile things are. Okay. And the idea that if we just kind of are the right type of sycophant, we'll change things. No, we won't. I believe in the doctrine of minimal force, which is why I use words and I don't use violence. But within that doctrine of minimal force, it doesn't mean you need to not say anything. I mean, if somebody's robbing you, maybe you shouldn't shoot them, but you should say something. Please don't rob me. I mean, I would be fine if the Libertarian Party could, then many of the Libertarian Party could at least get to that, saying that to government schools, please, I am asking you to stop robbing me. Right. That would be a great step.
Yeah, and it's sort of that lack of imagination again, that there are other the market would provide other things for people to do. It wouldn't be that every person would have to be able to afford what private school costs now. Yeah. And there's always charities. There are plenty of people that would not want poor children to go uneducated. There were charities before there was a public school. There's going to be charities after. So I think we can.
And there's charities now. I mean, Khan Academy is essentially a charity. I mean, it's free online education. That's incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible. That's what
the great use. Thing. Oh, awesome. The great thing. I mean, here's the really great thing, right? If you have a lot of money and that money can be taken from you by force, then all that money doesn't buy you any special respect or treatment. You could be a millionaire, but if somebody can steal your money by force, the government schools in your area don't have to cater to you.
Right.
But if you have just a few dollars and you can choose to give that few dollars to somebody or not give that few dollars to somebody, now somebody has to earn those few dollars. It's not a lot of money. It's your money, though. And you don't have to give it to somebody unless they give you something that you consider to worth it. Right. If all you have in the world is $15 or $5 or 10 cents, if somebody wants it, they need to offer you something that's going to get you to give them that money. And that is a voluntary exchange. It is a noble exchange. It is an uplifting exchange. It is everything that should be the way that education is done in America. And right now, at least in government schools, it's not. Right. That's why they're so bad, because you can't not pay for them.
Right. It's incentive for them to be more efficient and to do a better, job, because they want to earn that money. They need those things to be proven out. So, but moving on a little from that, since we're coming to the close of the show, so what do you see happening within, say, a post-Vohra Libertarian Party? Do you feel like you will be reelected as the vice chair of the LNC? And two, if not, what do you see for the party in that way? Are you going to continue on in the party? What's going to go on with that?
I mean, I'm not going anywhere. I mean, that's the thing. Like, to me, like, I mean, I'm not leaving the liberty movement. I'm not leaving the Libertarian Party. I'm not leaving the fight for government to end government schools. And there are many, 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 many groups that, as I've learned more, that I think are totally ready for the kind of leadership that I would provide. In terms of the Libertarian Party specifically, I am going to be running for vice chair. I am running for vice chair in New Orleans. And I know that there's currently the people are looking at these online polls and whatnot that don't have me in first place or sometimes have me in last place. Anything can happen at a convention.
Right.
And a libertarian convention is a big and exciting thing. So I know there's a lot of people that think, this person has it wrapped up or whatever. That's fine. Right. Let's wait for some of these debates. Let's wait for some of the presentations. Let's see what that mood is. Because let me tell you this. If by the end of some of those platform debates and whatnot, people are in the abolish government schools mood, that changes everything. If by the end of those debates they're in the let's have more government schools mood, yeah, I'll probably lose. And that's okay, because I'm not going to stop fighting. Getting elected to, it's been a huge honor to be the vice chair for 2 terms, but it's not like the end all and be all of my life. My goal is to end government schools. If I can do that as vice chair, great. If I can do that some other way, I'll do it the other way. Sure. And so there's one way or the other, I'm going to be around causing a ruckus as much as humanly possible. And I think it's going to be a very exciting future for the libertarian movement.
It's definitely going to be an exciting convention this year, I think. One of the things I've actually heard to a lot of people say that I do want to ask you before we go is, it's not what he's saying. It's that he's saying it in the office of, or in the position of being the vice chair of the Libertarian National Convention, that you speak for the party when you say these things. And to me, that sounds a little more like you're just, intimidated by using the bolder stance and feel it reflects, on them personally. But what would you say to a person that says that has that, well, he's speaking as a vice chair and it has more impact, and so he should consider that, not all of us would say those things?
So I believe that you have that as vice chair, I have internal communication and I have external communication. When I do external communication, that's speaking to the mainstream media, doing interviews, either voice or broadcast or print. In that case, I do believe that I have a responsibility to give the message in a way that minarchists can get behind, anarchists can get behind, etc. And I do. I mean, those that have seen my TV interviews, whether it's like something like CNBC or MSNBC or RT or Fox or whatever, I don't talk about things that I don't think 100% of people can get behind, and I don't even say things in a way that I don't think basically 100% of people can get behind. the way that I present in those circumstances, because that's external communication. When I'm communicating internally, that means primarily with people within the Libertarian Party. Most of the people who follow me on Facebook and complain, they're within the Libertarian Party. Those aren't Democrats and Republicans. They're not independents. They're libertarians. Those are people that I'm communicating to because I'm trying to help change and improve the internal culture of the Libertarian Party. I want us stronger so that we can take on this cultural force. We might not have enough votes right now to win, but we have more than enough people for a major cultural change, for a major cultural rebellion. We can totally change the status quo in this country if we can get behind some of these ideas. So there is internal facing and external facing. The idea that what I post on my personal Facebook page needs to meet the criteria that I would use on the public media, I don't think really holds any water. Even when I post on the Libertarian Party Facebook page, I still write in a way that I believe that minarchists and anarchists can get behind. And I think that it's when people say that I'm saying it as the vice chair, as long as I'm not saying anything that goes against the Libertarian Party platform, I can do whatever I want on my personal Facebook page. And in terms of public, I try to represent the party in the way that I think most of the party wants to be represented.
Well, that's a great answer. I think an interesting strategy that you've developed, and it certainly has gotten people talking. I think that's probably the biggest thing that people maybe sometimes miss, is that we are actually talking about libertarian values, libertarian ideals, and having that discussion within the party is important, because like you said, we have a culture war within the party, and we really have to get that tidied up before we can move on and do the things that we want to do and affect change in the country. So that said, I certainly appreciate you being with us today on the show, and it was a pleasure to meet you and to talk to you. And,
awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.